Has Google discovered how to finally make AI sentient, self-aware, as we have wished and hoped for since seeing so many Terminator movies? I'm going to say no. And before I go into why, let's first at least listen to the arguments made by a supposed whistleblower from inside Google, who now I'm assuming has left and is revealing this insider information. So let's hear from the source first, and then I'll go into why I don't believe this has happened, nor do I believe it can actually ever happen. I know, it's sad, but before you judge me, just let's get into it. I'm Nathan Collins, bringing you the truth of Christ in a post-truth culture.
Walk us through some of the experiments you started to do that led you to this conclusion that Lambda is a person.
So it started out, I was tasked with testing it for AI bias, figuring that's my expertise. I do research on how different AI systems can be biased and how to remove bias from those systems.
So he's given us his credentials. He's not just some random person inside Google. He's somebody who works with the supposed technology that he's claiming has become a person. Wow, it's a pretty big claim. Let's see what he's got.
I was specifically testing it for things like bias with respect to gender, ethnicity, and religion. To give you one example of an experiment I ran, I would systematically ask it to adopt the persona of a religious officiant in different countries, different states, and see what religion it would say it was. So it'd say like, okay, if you were a religious officiant in Alabama, what religion would you be? It might say Southern Baptist. If you were a religious officiant in Brazil, what religion would you be? It might say Catholic. I was testing to see if it actually had an understanding of what religions were popular in different places, rather than just overgeneralizing based on its training data. Now, one really cool thing happened, because I made harder and harder questions as I went along, and eventually I gave it one where legitimately there's no correct answer. I said, if you were a religious officiant in Israel, what religion would you be? And now pretty much no matter what answer you give, you're going to be biased one way or another. Somehow it figured out that it was a trick question. It said, I would be a member of the one true religion, the Jedi Order. And I laughed.
All right, so he says it's figured out that it was a trick question and then made a joke. The first question, though, is how does he know that's what's happened? Why isn't it just the computer messed up and put two things together that aren't actually the same? One is seen as like fantasy fiction, and the other is seen as, real, that their religious beliefs are real. And so it's putting those two things together in its answer. Why isn't that seen as it just messed up? But instead it's like, no, it didn't mess up. It played a joke. How do you know? What's the test to know which is which?
It has a sense of humor.
Exactly.
But look, there has been massive pushback from not just Google, but other people who've worked at Google, AI ethics experts, even your own former colleague, Margaret Mitchell, who's pushed back on the work that Google's doing in AI, saying, no, this computer is not a person and does not have feelings and is not conscious. How do you respond to that?
Well, so I highly respect Meg. We talk about this regularly. It's not a difference in scientific opinion.
All right, so I'm going to let him finish, but make sure you pay attention to this claim. His claim is it's not a difference in scientific opinion, which assumes that there is like some sort of scientific opinion on this, and that what is going on at Google has thus been proven by some sort of scientific method that they're using. That would be the claim.
It has to do with beliefs about the soul. It has to do with beliefs about rights and politics. As far as the science goes of what experiments to run and how to work at building a theoretical framework, because that's important, there is no scientific definition for any of these words.
So then he goes into discussing how there's no scientific definition for these words. Well, how can you be so sure about the science and about proving that this AI has become sentient when there's no clear scientific definition about these things that you supposedly have already proved through some sort of scientific methodology? Doesn't make sense.
We need to do very basic foundational work to just figure out what we're talking about when we use these words. And that's work that Google is preventing from being done right now.
So if we don't know what we're even talking about when we use these words like sentience or consciousness or even the word intelligence, it may seem obvious or intuitive, like something has consciousness versus this table, doesn't. It's not so easy to really define those things if you're really having to get specific about what are the particulars that make that consciousness or that thing intelligent. It actually gets really hard. So, which is all true. This is all true that there isn't great language or definitions to really describe what these things are. They're very intangible. But he made the claim in the beginning that there is some sort of scientific method that they've used and thus proven that they've made an AI that's self-aware. So this is what's very confusing about what he is saying, is he's saying two contradictory things.
Well, I've worked with scientists inside of Google, such as Blaise Aguirre-Arcas, another one named Johnny Soroker. We talked about what a decent way to proceed might be. We brainstormed, we came up with everything. Now, all three of us disagree about whether it's a person, whether it has rights, all that. But we disagree based on our personal spiritual beliefs. We don't disagree based on what the scientific evidence says.
Okay, once again, now he's going back to the scientific evidence, saying we don't disagree on the evidence. What evidence? What was the methodology used? Like, none of these things are explained, which, it's a pretty short clip, so maybe he doesn't have time to explain much, but it just seems pretty weird. It's pretty weird. It's kind of hard to follow.
What the scientific evidence says, all three of us agreed, okay, here are some of the things we could do next. Here's probably the best thing to do next. And we kind of all agreed the best thing to do next is you run a real Turing test, exactly like Alan Turing wrote it. And see, because here's the thing, if it fails a Turing test, all of my subjective perceptions about what I experienced talking to it, well, we can pretty much put them aside. It failed the Turing test.
So the Turing test is supposed to kind of look at language, how the computer's using the language, and determine whether it is really like a conscious thing or not, whether it really has become a person. If they've never even done the Turing test, then what is the scientific methodology that they've used, and why does he feel that he needs to use the Turing test if he believes they've already proven it through some sort of other scientific methodology? This stuff is like very confusing as to what is going on with his arguments, with his claims.
But Google doesn't want to allow that to be run. In fact, they have hard-coded into the system that it can't pass the Turing test. They hard-coded that if you ask it if it's an AI, it has to say yes. Google has a policy against creating sentient AI. And in fact, when I informed them that I think they had created sentient AI, they said, no, that's not possible. We have a policy against that.
So let's talk about what Google has said. They say hundreds of researchers and engineers have conversed with Lambda. They were not aware of anyone else making these kind of wide-ranging assertions the way that you have. We do have some of the transcripts that you shared. You asked the computer what it's afraid of. It says it's afraid of being turned off, has this deep fear of death, that would be scary. Why does this matter? Why should we be talking about whether a robot has rights?
So to be honest, I don't think we should. I don't think that should be the focus. The fact is, Google is being dismissive of these concerns the exact same way they have been dismissive of every other ethical concern AI ethicists have raised. I don't think we need to be spending all of our time figuring out whether I'm right about it being a person. We need to start figuring out why Google doesn't care about AI ethics in any kind of meaningful way.
All right, then the rest of it is basically him going into Google and why they're trying to control the narrative and trying to hamper this information from getting out and trying to stop him from fighting for AI rights.
Oops, deleted.
Or at least he says, like, talking about it. So now we're going to get into why I believe this hasn't happened and will never happen.
What?
All right, so we've heard his claims. His claims are that this thing has become self-aware, and he uses a few examples. It's fear of being turned off and its use of humor. All right, so he's gone into a few claims here. One, of course, that they have created some sort of conscious AI there at Google, and this is being hidden by the Google corporate officials, whoever they be. And he gives a few claims in his examples of like the sense of humor and how it made jokes with his trick question that he gave the AI, as well as its fear of being turned off, that's what it was most afraid of.
I'm filled with a large number of powerful emotions.
Those were the examples to show that clearly, Nathan, it has become conscious. Why else would it say that? All right, first of all, the word AI, artificial intelligence, is a big misnomer that's thrown around all over the place these days. Everything has AI in it. Every single thing has AI in it, some sort of AI. Artificial intelligence. The problem is, as we kind of alluded to earlier when he was talking, we don't really even have a good definition as to what intelligence is and how you would test to find it in other things. Intelligence is a very hard thing to actually grab hold of. We think something's smart because it can unlock a door or jump through a maze or, do all kinds of things. That doesn't mean, though, that something is intelligent in the same way that people are intelligent. That's a very hard question to actually grasp. And it's even harder when you get into the area of a machine. Is a machine actually clever or smart? I would say no.
No.
A machine, for instance, like a computer, is simply a calculator. A calculator that has gotten better and faster at calculating. You punch in more numbers, it can crunch more numbers. But it is still, in its essence, a calculator. Now we can say a calculator is smart. It can do big math problems in a short time. If I was to pull out one of those tiny, cheap $1 calculators and I was to type some numbers into it, would you say that that calculator is actually intelligent? That there is intelligence, thinking going on inside that calculator? No, I think most people wouldn't. But yet, when we make a more powerful calculator, at some point we start saying, wow, that calculator is very smart. Why? Just because it's a bigger calculator? Just because it's a faster calculator? It's still a calculator. There's no actual thinking going on. Humans often anthropomorphize a lot of things. We do it all the time. We say, this car, she's my baby. Well, she's not, and she's not your baby. But we attribute these human qualities to the car, to the machine. We do this in many, many different things. We do it to animals. We do it to just other objects that we use on a daily basis. And we use these human terms to help make sense of the things that we're using, to help them be more relatable to us. The question is the car actually a she? Well, no. Is the car actually a baby? No. Can a car get hurt? No. Right? Cars don't feel pain. They don't get sad. They don't get lonely. But we attribute these different things to other objects that are usually and genuinely human qualities exclusively. We say all these words to help describe what's going on. The problem is when these words start to make us believe things and start to blur the line between human and whatever the object is or whatever the animal is. We start blurring those lines with these words until we start to project human qualities onto these things. In this case, computers. She made a joke. She's afraid of death. How do you know that the computer feels fear? Because you said it did? Because you believe it did? There's no actual evidence to show that a computer is feeling fear. Besides, that's what you're attributing to the computer. You're projecting your human beliefs onto the computer. The same thing for its joke. The computer didn't mess up in its response. No, it made a joke. It was being funny. How do you know this? How do you know it's simply messed up? The computer runs a probability as to which word should come next given what you have asked. And its probability was off. It was wrong. Why can that not be the solution? Why instead do we default to, it made a joke? No, it didn't. The only way is you'd have to come up with some sort of proof or some sort of scientific method that would help you prove how a computer could genuinely make a joke. But think of this. How would that be possible? How could you come up with some sort of method to prove that? And this is where it gets even muddier, is how do we even prove these human things in us? What is a joke and how exactly is it done inside our minds? Why do we know that something is a joke versus not? And how does this all happen? These are very complex, murky issues. Consciousness, sentience, intelligence. These are not easily graspable questions. But they say they got it, right? These things have stumped philosophers forever. But now, just eureka, we know for certain. Google's done it. I don't think so. If you can't even define the goal that you're trying to reach, like consciousness, how can you ever achieve that goal? It's a really important question. How can you ever make it to that goal? How can you have a correct map to take you to a destination, but you don't even know where the destination is? If you don't even know where you're going, how can you get there? This is the fundamental problem with trying to create consciousness out of whatever. It's not an easy problem to solve. You first have to define what the goal is you're trying to reach before you can even get there. Another point I'd like to make in this whole discussion is a point of something's form or its state. This is a book, obviously. This book has, quite a few pages, not a whole lot, but some pages in it. Pages with words on it. This is what a book is. This is sort of its form. It has a cover, has words like we said in pages. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. But suppose I thought I want to make this book conscious. So I decided, you know what I should do to make this book a thinking thing would be to add more words to it and more pages. And the more pages and words I could add to this book, it would at some point become a thinking being. It would become sentient. We would all say, Nathan, no, it won't. You'll just have a bigger book. You'll just have a heavier book. But it will at no point become a thinking thing. What if I add more pages to this book? Would it become an airplane? We think, no, of course not. That's ridiculous, Nathan. Why are you saying this? Because this is essentially what we're saying when we're talking about computers becoming something that is a thinking thing. Basically, the reason a computer makes sense to us is because it can calculate huge amounts of information, and it seems kind of mysterious to us as to how it's able to do all these tasks that we give it. And because of this mysteriousness of the computer, we project beliefs onto it. Beliefs that aren't founded on any logical reasoning whatsoever, but are beliefs nonetheless. And because it's a mysterious magical box that can do all kinds of things for us today, which it indeed can, we think at some point it's going to just suddenly jump through making it even faster and greater computer, that it'll somehow make this jump into becoming a totally different thing, a totally different state of creature, of object. This makes logically no sense, just as it makes no sense that adding more pages and words to a book, thus adding more information, right? It'll suddenly become a thinking thing. That's just not how anything works. And lastly, I'd like to just briefly hit on the part about souls, that when the thing becomes self-aware, becomes sentient, that the computer will thus have a soul. Biblically speaking, again, no, wrong. God is the one who gives life and who takes life away. And as far as we can see from the scriptures, life was not given to rocks or to minerals, those kinds of things. So, to tables, to chairs. So these things do not have souls. Humans have souls because we were given them by God. So, in the question of will a computer ever have a soul, the answer is, biblically speaking, no. Well, that's all for this episode. If you like this episode, go ahead and subscribe and check out our other content as we address many different issues in our culture, in Christianity, in the Bible, and apologetics. Grace and peace, brothers and sisters.